Good morning. Please stand as you're willing and able and join us in the opening hymn. This needs to be on. Hello, hello. Am I on now? Good morning. Please stand as you're willing and able for the opening hymn. Don is going to play it through one time before we begin to sing because it's not terribly familiar. Ready.
Faith is a forest in which doubts play and hide. Insight can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life may this thread I weave. Strength and commitment to all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this precious day. For me in all I do and say. Seeds of both big and strong are scattered in air. Dignity shines undimmed by bigotry's glare. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Help me bear witness to all I believe. Justice be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Through me in all I do and say. Fortune and famine ride the swift wave of change. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Web of life, may this thread I weave. In your compassion with all I believe. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say.
Welcome. Welcome to all of you who are in here with us in community today or anywhere online, wherever you may be. We are so glad you are here with us. I'm Catherine Bonner. I'm the Director of Programs and Religious Education and a member of our worship team. And when our settled minister, Reverend Jay, is out of the pulpit, our worship team brings in guest ministers and guest speakers to give us a variety of perspectives on the world and maybe doing things differently. Remember that later on. Today, Reverend Beth Miller, a retired Unitarian Universalist minister, our former associate minister, and a current member of our congregation is going to be our guest minister today. And I look forward to hearing her reflections. Our order of service is also slightly different, but we'll get to that later. If you're a visitor, we encourage you to stop by our welcome table right outside the sanctuary doors and sign up for our weekly newsletter to find out more about us and our faith, Unitarian Universalism. If you're visiting via YouTube, we hope that you'll complete our virtual guest book, which you can see at www.uusrq.org, so that you too can get our weekly newsletter and learn more about us. For those of you who are new to Unitarian Universalism, we are a faith that has no dogma or creed. We are a people of many backgrounds who have different beliefs, but shared values. And we are united by our covenant to uphold and live those values, which include believing in the worthiness of every person, showing compassion and fairness, accepting others for who they are, growing through a personal search for truth, leading with democratic spirit, working for justice, and knowing that everything is connected. You can learn more about our faith at www.uua.org or just check out our website. We are a vibrant congregation, and we hope that you will join us for our coffee hour in the courtyard after the service so that we can get to know you better. We are a chatty bunch. And if you aren't able to join us for coffee, join us in any of the events that are listed in your order of service. You can take that piece of paper home with you, or any of our virtual events that are listed in our newsletter. And if you don't see something you like, you let me know, because it's my job to create ways to get you engaged and supported on your life's journey. I do want to highlight an upcoming event this Wednesday. I think it is in the order of service at April 30th at Payne Park near downtown Sarasota. Our minister, along with other liberal ministers in the area, are holding a vigil at noon. Please join them if you can. Service and social justice is a big part of our faith and our congregation's MO. Once a month, our congregation shares the offering collected with a local organization that is doing that work in our community. And today is that day. And our collections will go to Sarasota Strong. And so I'd like to invite Tom Edwards to give us some information about this very worthy cause.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and committed to social justice on this bright, sunny Sunday morning. I started my day in an 8 out on the Intercoastal Waterway and did about 10,000 meters. And how I used that opportunity to be with my friends and nature is one of the ways that all of you can look to explore trauma. SRQ Strong is an advocate for trauma awareness. You might know me as a school board member, and how I found trauma is through the 3rd grade reading scores, and I took a deeper dive into those outcomes. I looked at the fact that the lowest quartile of those scores are always in Title I schools, and for the last several years they've been stagnant, not just here in Sarasota, but across the country and the state. I also took a deeper dive into the fact that we have incredible superintendents, from Wilma Hamilton to Lori White to Brennan Asplin to our current Superintendent Terry Connor, and amazing teachers who have all really attacked that issue, but to no avail. And the only other common denominator that I could come up with was poverty. So when poverty enters a household, so does trauma. It shows up in various forms of shelters, food, substance abuse, domestic violence, any number of things that could be readily associated with trauma. The definition of trauma, by the way, is when toxic stress supersedes our ability to cope. Many of you might have even seen a recent op-ed that I published into the Sarasota Herald Tribune, where the charter boat captain that was blasted all over social media had commandeered the boat of a 22-year-old. Not only was the charter captain a victim of PTSD, but that young 22-year-old member was also traumatized when that gentleman jumped on his boat and commandeered it. The last thing I want to point out to you is that if you think back, this past September, October, we experienced 3 hurricanes, 2 of which were within 10 days. Whether or not you experienced hurricane damage, Those 3 hurricanes that came barreling at us in such a short period of time leveled an experience of trauma over the entire community. And that was extended over a period of time because everywhere we went, we saw damage. Every newspaper that we picked up, we saw damage. Every time we looked at social media, we saw damage. And that extended experience of trauma is what we're at SRQ Strong trying to educate the community, because here's why. If we understand that all of us in some form or another have experienced our own forms of trauma, whether it's from childhood, whether it's from hurricanes. We recently hosted a panel discussion on bullying, school bullying. And the gathering that was just mentioned that will be at Payne Park at this noon on Wednesday is an SRQ Strong facilitated a trauma healing workshop because, quite frankly, the government has been bullying us and continues to bully us, and many of us, whether through being members of the LGBTQ plus community or our fear of Social Security or our friends being deported, are experiencing again over and over toxic stress that can be defined as trauma. The last thing about trauma awareness and getting our work out to create resiliency and healing is to really leave all of you with an understanding of when you see road rage or when you see someone fly off the handle for some unexpected reason, that's usually a behavior that's coming from unresolved trauma. And instead of all of us saying, what's wrong with that person, we really start to lead with an empathy and an understanding that we might ask the question, what happened to that person? So that the common denominator of sharing and empathy and understanding supersedes all political judgments and all, as I say, judgments. So I appreciate the time. I am so proud to be part of your congregation today. I'm often in the room through Box of Diversity. You've invited me into your social justice committee as I've run for school board. So I'm grateful for your support of SRQ Strong and our commitment to trauma awareness and making it a better community, a community that cares for itself.
Thank you, Tom. Now, this is where our order of service is different. Instead of holding the offertory in the middle of the service, where you may have forgotten about what Tom just said, we're holding it right now. Please be as generous as you can. For those who are on YouTube, there is a link to donate in the description below. And if you have a cell phone, you can use the QR code in your order of service or displayed on the screen behind me to make a donation. And I invite Jane to come forward and enlighten us with her beautiful music as you dig deep into those pockets. Thank you. Let our sacred time begin.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Don. That was great. And thank you, Catherine and Tom, for starting us off like that. That was wonderful. It's so good to be back with you. I'm with you every other Sunday at least in the choir, and most other Sundays in the chairs. But it's nice to be standing up here talking to you and seeing your faces from this angle today. In the recent movie Conclave, Ralph Fiennes plays Cardinal Lawrence, the dean of the College of Cardinals, who's in charge of conducting the conclave to call a new pope. And that's very relevant this week when we've just lost Pope Francis, who was such a friend to so many. And so our thoughts are with him, of course, and with billions of people around the world who are mourning his passing today. Our opening words are part of the homily that this character, Cardinal Lawrence, gives at the beginning of the conclave process, where all the cardinals are locked down to go through this process. And he says this: "Certainty is the great enemy of unity. Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance. Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. If there were only certainty and no doubt, there would be no mystery and therefore no need for faith." You'll hear more about that later. But with this thought in mind, please join me now in affirming our value of pluralism, which is printed in your order of service and will be on the screen behind me as well, as Catherine lights the chalice. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect.
There we go. So today's story is Old Turtle and the Broken Truth by Douglas Wood, watercolors by John J. Muth, and adapted by myself. Once in a beautiful faraway land, a land where every stone was a teacher, and every breeze a language, and every lake was a mirror, and every tree a ladder to the stars, there fell a truth. It streaked down, but as it fell, it broke. And one of the pieces blazed off through the night sky, and the other fell to the earth. In the morning, Crow found the fallen piece. It was a stone, shiny and pleasing to the eye, so he picked it up. "This is a lovely truth," said Crow. "I will keep it," and he carried it away. But after a while, Crow said, "This truth does not feel quite right. A part of it is missing. I'll look for a whole one." And so he flew off and he dropped it to the ground. Other creatures soon noticed the truth as well. Each picked it up and carried it for a while, but like Crow, they knew the truth was not complete. Soon, none of the creatures even noticed the broken truth anymore, and it lay on the ground forgotten. And then a human being found it. And on the stone was writing, and it said, "You are loved." The man held it carefully, thinking it was the loveliest thing he had ever seen, and it seemed to sparkle and to speak just to him alone. The man had never felt so proud and so happy. So he took this wonderful truth to his people, those who lived with him, who spoke as he spoke and dressed as he dressed, and whose faces looked like his. And together they cherished their newfound truth and believed in it. They hugged it to themselves, and it became their most important possession. Soon, the man and his people did not hear the language of breezes and stones anymore, but heard only their truth. They did not see the beauty in the world. They saw only their sparkling truth, and they knew it was the truth. It made them feel good and proud and strong. But soon they also began to feel fear and anger towards those who weren't like them and did not share their truth. The other creatures and the people of the earth seemed less and less important. Others wanted this truth for themselves. Many battles were fought, and the broken truth was won and lost over and over again. But such was its power and beauty that no one ever doubted it, and they felt a great emptiness where their truth had been when it was lost. The stones and trees suffered. The breeze and the water suffered. And the animals and the earth, and most of all, the people suffered. Until one day, a little girl came to find Old Turtle, the most ancient and wisest in the world. "Why have you come so far to find me?" asked Old Turtle. I wanted to ask a question," said the little girl. "Where I live, the earth is sore, and people are suffering. Battles are fought over and over again. People say it has always been this way, and it will never change." "Can it change, Old Turtle? Can we make it change?" Old Turtle replied, "The world you describe is not the world that has always been." She told of how the people had found the broken truth and the suffering it had caused, because it is so close to a great, whole, beautiful truth that people love it so. But it is the lost portion of that broken truth that people need if this world is to be made whole again. "But where is the missing piece? Can we put the truth back together again?" asked the girl. "There are truths all around us and within us. They twinkle in the night sky and bloom upon the earth. They fall upon us every day. The people, clutching their one truth, forget it is only part of all the small and lovely truths of life. They no longer see or hear those truths, but perhaps, little one, you can." "I'll try," said the little girl. So the little girl pondered the words of Old Turtle, listened to the breeze, and thought perhaps she understood. Remember, when one person can see themselves and the others that neither look, think, or act as they do, then can the broken truth be mended. Only then will people know that every person, every being is important, and this world was made for each of us. Old Turtle then placed something in the little girl's hand. "I have saved it for a very long time, for someone just like you." Now those who take great journeys of the heart are changed. Her people did not recognize the girl upon her return, and when she spoke, they did not understand. She spoke of a world made of small and gentle truths, all of the people being one people, but they could not catch her meaning. Suddenly, the little girl knew what to do, so she climbed up to the tower where the truth was on display for all to see. She took Old Turtle's gift from her pocket and carefully added the missing piece to the broken truth. The fit was perfect. You are loved, and so are they. The people looked and looked. Some frowned, some smiled, some cried, and they began to understand. The people could again see the beauty of the world, and slowly, as they met other people different from themselves, they began to see themselves. And far away on a hill, Old Turtle smiled. So how often do we cling to something we just know to be the truth to find out that maybe we have missed something? Like the young girl, each of us is on a journey to find the truth for ourselves. Unlike other faiths, Unitarian Universalism encourages each of us to find our own spiritual truths as we covenant to be with each other in a loving community to nurture the spirit and heal our world. So I now invite any children and youth to join me and Miss Julie in the West Wing for a special presentation on the life of bees and their importance in our world. Thank you.
We now enter that time in our service for centering, followed by a few moments of silence. And these words for the time for centering are from the Reverend Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, eternal mystery that holds us close, receive the meditations of our hearts this morning. We come together in this quiet time to unify our hearts again towards the clarion call of our times. May the spiritual values we share guide us to greater connection and greater truth. May we find courage to do our part in dismantling systems of oppression within ourselves and in our communities in order that all might be free. May we cherish and tend to the divine spark within us and know in our bones that we are worthy of love and whole, just as we are. Love is not scarce, even as our ability to extend compassion and grace may sometimes be. I invite you to place your hand over your heart with me and feel the spirit of life within you. The spirit of life is the divine within us. The spirit of life is here among us. Feel it in the beating of your heart as we now share a few moments of silence. I mentioned in the blurb that you saw in our newsletter, the contact, that this is the very day of the 35th anniversary of my ordination to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Just so happened. Thank you. It's a special, special pleasure to share the pulpit, to share some of my story with you on this day. And interestingly enough, the words for centering were written by the current minister of the church where I became a Unitarian Universalist and that ordained me and sent me on my way 35 years ago, Rebecca Savage. She's a wonderful young woman. I want to share some of my journey then from growing up in the Methodist Church to become a Unitarian Universalist in 1974 to being ordained to the ministry in 1990. Now, at least the first leg of my journey, becoming a UU, is probably going to be familiar to many of you who grew up in different faith traditions and somehow found your way here later in life. And I also, a little bit later, want to talk with you about the tension between certainty and doubt as we engage in our own free and responsible search for truth and meaning in this non-creedal, pluralistic faith that we share, and about the ministry we share all together as Unitarian Universalists. So a few months before my 5th birthday, my parents moved us from Syracuse, New York, to Leesburg, Florida, a little town in the middle of Florida that's now surrounded by the villages and all kinds of stuff. But back then, there were like 13,000 people. It was a little town in the middle of Florida. They were just sick and tired of the snow and cold in Syracuse, New York, and they wanted out. Now, my parents were not churchgoers. When I started kindergarten in 1954, however, we said the Lord's Prayer in school every day, and on Monday mornings, the teacher would always ask us to raise our hand if we had gone to Sunday school the day before. And I know, this was before that was illegal. And it soon became clear to me that it really was not okay to not raise your hand on Monday morning. In fact, I think that the only other kid who didn't raise their hand was the only Jewish kid in the class. So I asked my parents to take me to Sunday school. They were willing to find a church for me, so together we visited several churches before settling on the Methodist church on Main Street. Now, they chose this church because it had a big Sunday school program with lots going on for kids, and it was in walking distance of home. They accompanied me a few times until they were sure that I could find my own way home, and then I only saw them at church on Easter and Christmas. But I became very, very much a part of the Morrison Memorial Methodist Church of Leesburg, Florida. It's still there on Main Street. I loved it. I loved the songs. Jesus loves me, this I know. You know that one. He's got the whole world in his hands. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. I loved all that. I loved the Bible stories, stories about the baby Jesus and about that guy David who slew the giant. I didn't know what slew meant, but I loved the story. And about Noah building this ark and saving all those animals. Well, of course, I loved animals, so that was really good. And Jesus feeding all those people with just a few loaves of bread and some fishes. Walking on water, healing the sick, raising the dead even. It was all fascinating. Sunday school was before the church service. The kids could come after, they had adult Sunday school at the same time. And most of the kids stayed with their parents and went to church after Sunday school. And even though my parents didn't come, pretty soon I started saying also for the services. And I loved that too. The stained glass windows were awesome. The size of the sanctuary, the beautiful wooden pews and pulpit and rails and the choir loft and the ceiling, all of it just amazed me. It was awesome. We kids were given a children's bulletin and some crayons, so if we got bored, we could color. But I didn't get bored. I rarely got bored because even though I didn't know much, I didn't understand what the minister was talking about, I loved his voice, especially when he prayed, and it would get somewhat quiet and peaceful and mystical. I just loved it. So I didn't need to color. I was just in rapture with all of this. There was this sense of mystery and wonder for me about the whole experience. As I got older, I became more and more involved. I took the Sunday school lessons seriously. I went to vacation Bible school, and later, when I was older, Methodist youth camp in the summer. When I was old enough, I helped in the nursery, I sang in the youth choir, and I served at church dinners. The Methodist church was my spiritual home. And it was something I needed very much as I was growing up because, Tom talked a little bit about trauma. We all have trauma growing up. My home life wasn't very nurturing. It wasn't dangerous or bad, it just wasn't very nurturing, and I needed more in my life than what I was getting at home. And to tell you the truth, I think I would have become one of those wayward kids had it not been for the church. I think it kept me on the right path and safe as I was growing up from childhood into adolescence. But as happened to so many of us who eventually became Unitarian Universalists, I had a crisis of faith, a dark night of the soul, if you will, because I was devout. I had answered numerous altar calls, accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I read the Bible at home, and I prayed, and I followed the rules as best I could. But when I was 12, and there was a significant family crisis, my fervent prayers and my attempts to bargain with God didn't help. Nothing helped. God was absent, or at least silent, and I felt like I was on my own. Well, I kept going to church anyway because it was my community, and especially the youth fellowship at that time was where my closest friends were and my sense of being in connection with other people. But I could no longer believe that Jesus loved me, that God's eye was on the sparrow and he was watching me, that God held me in the palm of his hand. I had trusted the Lord, but the Lord had let me down. As my situation worsened, I became increasingly doubtful of many of the things I had been taught as a young Christian. When I asked any questions about the teachings and shared any of my doubts, they were rebuffed, and I was encouraged to accept whatever it was on faith. And if I couldn't accept it as certainty, I was encouraged to accept it as mystery. I felt sinful for my doubts, and I prayed for forgiveness and for greater faith. Now, to be fair, I much later realized that my understanding of what Christianity was all about was a child's simple version, very simple understanding. Most adult Christians I know have much more nuanced systems of belief that accept doubt and grapple with how to be in right relationship with the doctrines of their particular church. But by the time I was aware of that, I had already found my home in Unitarian Universalism. So I did go to a Methodist seminary and reconnected with those roots, but by then I was a Unitarian Universalist. So now fast forward to 1974, when my then fiance and I decided to marry, and he, having grown up in a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Virginia, we were living in Maryland, suggested that we meet with the minister at the UU closest church in Rockville, Maryland. We liked him very much. He was just a cool guy, and months before the ceremony, we had joined and become very active members of that church, me with religious education and him with music. This is where the opening reading comes into my story now. I'm shifting gears. The character, Carter Lawrence, says that certainty, not doubt, is the enemy. It's the enemy of unity, the enemy of tolerance. As much as I liked the minister and the music, the people, and the sense of community, it was this idea that certainty, not doubt, is the enemy that drew me in. I was not sinful for my doubts. They were human. They were normal. It was okay. From the time I learned that doubt was not only acceptable but expected in Unitarian Universalism, I knew I had found my place in the family of religions. We don't need to be certain about answers to life's big questions, questions we have no way of knowing the factual answers to. Doubt is not sinful. Doubt is not only acceptable, it's embedded in our values. The old turtle story that Catherine talked about that some, and so did Tom. They really set out this sermon up beautifully. The free and responsible search for truth and meaning that we spoke of as we lit the challenge suggests that it's a journey, that it's up to us, that we are to find our own spiritual path. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth says that too, and the rights of conscience. Through Sunday services and many programs and groups, our congregations offer resources, inspiration, but it's our responsibility to seek and to learn and to form our own beliefs. And it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done thing, because we keep learning new things. We keep being exposed to new information. And I'm not saying that belief must be based on proven fact. If for you it is, that's okay. But if for you it's more flexible than that, that's fine too. We each need our own level of factual verifications for what we believe. And we differ on those levels of fact. Some of the things we can't know for sure simply feel right to some of us, and others not so much. It's up to us to each decide what does and doesn't sit with us as true. An example for me is prayer. Does God hear and answer prayers? My doubt about that are significant, but I don't have to believe that to believe in the power of prayer. 2 quotes I heard as a relatively new UU opened my perspective on prayer. First is, prayer doesn't change things. Prayer changes people, and people change things. That's by the Reverend Lon Ray Call. Whether there's a God that listens and responds or not, praying makes me mindful, grounds me, makes me aware. It changes my mindset or my focus of attention, and I respond in kind. The other quote was, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough, which is attributed to Meister Eckhart, a 14th century German philosopher and mystic. Gratitude is a very important spiritual value, and one that we hold up frequently here, like every Sunday, and practice. Saying prayers of gratitude puts me in touch with what I'm grateful for and helps me to respond with a grateful heart. It keeps me mindful of it, and so I do pray prayers of gratitude regularly. Our words for centering this morning were a prayer. On our behalf, I prayed for our guidance toward greater connection and greater truth, for courage to do our part in dismantling systems of oppression, that we tend to the divine spark within us, and that we know that we are indeed worthy of love. God may not have heard that prayer. God may have heard that prayer. I don't know, but we heard that prayer, and I hope it resonates with us on this day, at least. The point of it, for me, is to remind us, to make us more mindful, to center us. That, for me, is what prayer is about. So that's an example of where we may differ. Some of you may not believe in prayer at all or have any use for it, and that's okay. We differ. It's fine. It's often said, though, that we can believe anything that we want, but I don't believe that's true. It's an honest misunderstanding if we're new Unitarian Universalists and come from a religious background where we felt that constraint that I expressed earlier. But the idea that we can believe anything we want sells us short. If that were true, I would literally believe what I learned in Sunday school as a child. I would love to believe that Jesus loves me and that God holds me in the palm of his hand and that there's a place for me when my earthly life ends. And it might be true, but I have my doubts about it. I'm an agnostic, so I'm open still to all of that. But it's not something that I can believe is really true. But I would like to. So it's not true. We can believe anything we want. So instead, we say that each of us must work out for ourselves what our beliefs are, what our faith stance is. No one here is going to tell us what to believe, not even from the pulpit. What's said up here is true for the speaker. We speak with integrity from this pulpit. It will resonate with each of you some weeks, and other weeks maybe not so much. That's the way of a non-creedal, pluralistic congregation. It's for each of us to live in our own tension, live with that tension between doubt and certainty. And I did what Jay sometimes does. I lost my place. It's for each of us to live in our own tension between doubt and certainty and find our truths based on our own life experience, on our understandings of the way life works, on our exemplars that we look up to, on our ethics and our interpretations of the stories we hear from the sacred texts of all the world's religions, as well as from poetry and science and secular philosophy. We have all that grist for our meaning-making and belief-finding mills. Now that seems like a lot of work, but if we really do grapple with those big questions of faith, we develop the courage and the wisdom to cope with whatever existential doubt accompanies our faith. Our faith will be strong, or at least honest, both despite of and because of our doubts. I'm reminded of something Marge Piercy says in her novel, Fly Away Home. One of her characters, a mother, says about her two daughters. She says, the girls have been raised Unitarian, which seems the nice, sensible compromise between having no religion at all and having to lie about what we believe. Enough religion to be respectable, but not enough to get in the way. But no, that's not it at all. Unitarian Universalism is supposed to get in the way. It's supposed to get in the way of complacency, get in the way of prescribed or easy answers. In other words, it's our religious obligation not to believe anything we want to, not to be convenient, but to only believe that which we can actually, in all honesty and with integrity, believe to be true. And it's an ongoing thing. It's not a one and done. We are expected to take the search seriously, to doubt, to question, to align our actions with our beliefs, both theological and ethical. Institutionally, our faith doesn't prescribe answers to questions the human mind simply cannot answer with certainty. And while Cardinal Lawrence does not speak for the Catholic Church, his words speak deeply to us. Certainty is the great enemy of unity. Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance. Our faith is a living thing precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt. And now we'll hear from Jane again. Jane Hoffman, thank you so much for being with us today. We always love having you and your music here. Thank you. This reading is called St. Francis of the Grill, and it's from the San Francisco Chronicle in 2000, March of 2000. No one ever went away hungry or mad at Anne's Cafe in Oakland. There is no one in Oakland with as many friends as Frances Bianetti. She's made them one at a time, just like the 100 pancakes, 15 dozen eggs, and 50 to 60 pounds of potatoes she's grilled up at Anne's Cafe every day, 5 days a week for the past 42 years. Every city has a place like this, a hole-in-the-wall breakfast spot that is heavy on atmosphere and legend, and the food is, well, it's fitting. The service and camaraderie are priceless. And that's what will be missed when Frances hangs up her spatula for the last time on Friday. She and her husband Frank are retiring and closing the doors to the Fruitvale Avenue Cafe. 3 things are sure to happen anytime you pass through the door. You will be greeted and treated like a returning son or daughter. You will be served so much food that you will not finish the meal, and if you're single, expect to be introduced or referred to someone Frances has chosen especially for you. Everyone, regardless of ethnicity or social standing, has a place in the 19-seat cafe, which is standing room only most of the time in a space about the size of a mobile home. The cafe bears the name of Frances's mom, Anna Chichiria, who opened it in February 1958. Frances is a friend to cops and crooks, people down on their luck, and self-conscious overachievers. They come from the neighborhood and beyond. A retired Oakland cop drove all the way from Monterey just to say goodbye this week. End of reading. Serendipity just sometimes happens, and when it does, it's such a pleasure. My Docs app, said it was almost full. So I took some time earlier this week to delete a bunch of files, and before I deleted them, I kind of had to look at them if I didn't know just what they were to see if I maybe would need them again. And I came across this story about Frances Bianetti's retirement that was written 25 years ago. I haven't thought much about it since, and I don't remember actually if I used it in a sermon back then or not. I'm not sure whether I did or not. I should have if I didn't. Anyway, when I opened it and read it, I thought this is a great example of a life of loving service by an ordinary person with no particular training or special knowledge, just a loving spirit and a willing heart and a calling to make a difference in the lives of those she encounters every day. I don't know if Frances was religious or not, but her work was a ministry and a blessing to those she served. As Reverend Jay frequently reminds us, we are all called. The Reverend Gordon B. McKeeman, retired UU minister of blessed memory, says this about that. Ministry is all that we do together. He says that ministry is a quality of being that affirms human dignity. This kind of ministry doesn't require a seminary degree or ordination. It simply asks, are you willing to show up in your life with your whole heart, to listen, to care, to speak the truth, to serve others in whatever ways you can? That's the call of shared ministry. Your calling is simply about bringing what you have and who you are, guided by your own beliefs and the values we share, like Frances Bianetti. Doesn't have to be in a cafe, though, but like Frances Bianetti. And like so many wonderful examples here in this sanctuary and watching us on YouTube this morning. Shared ministry takes many forms. Sometimes it's helping to lead worship. Sometimes it's lighting the chalice, or sometimes it's just as often making coffee for coffee hour, or calling somebody who's been having a hard time, going through a hard time, serving on a committee with thoughtfulness, integrity, or welcoming a newcomer and helping them to feel at home. Sometimes it's showing up for justice work, holding space for grief, or simply being a kind and steady presence in this community and beyond. But what if you can't stand for long or drive anymore? What if your memory isn't as good as it used to be? What if you live with chronic pain or fatigue, or your body just doesn't move the way it once did? The calling is still for you, because ministry is not measured in stamina, it's measured in spirit. Whether you serve with your hands, your voice, your mind, or your stillness, your ministry still matters. If you cannot teach religious education or march in protests, maybe your ministry is simply being present with compassion and kindness to those around you. It is said that people don't remember you for what you said to them. They remember you for how you made them feel. People can feel loved and lifted up by your presence. There is no one way to serve, but each of us is needed in the life of this congregation, and not just here. Your call to ministry stretches far beyond these doors, into our homes, our daily lives, our neighborhoods, our routines. It lives in the kindness that we show a stranger. And Tom reminded us of how most of us are traumatized right now or suffering from stress. Our kindness can help with that and keep people from going off the rails. It's shown, our ministry is shown in the way we offer our practice of ministry is where we care for a loved one. When we care for a loved one, when we check in on a neighbor, when we share our stories with honesty or bear witness to someone else's story, we are practicing ministry then. We practice ministry when we choose love over fear or disdain in the small, quiet moments that no one else sees. And especially now, in this time of political repression and rising authoritarianism and assault on the dignity of marginalized people, our ministry also means resistance. It means standing up for the vulnerable. It means organizing, writing, calling, voting, disrupting. It means telling the truth when the lies are louder. It means aligning our values not just with our beliefs, but with our actions within the limitations of our individual situations. If you march, your footsteps are a prayer. If you educate, your voice is a sermon. If you donate, your offering is sacred. If you speak out, even when your voice trembles, that too is ministry. There are many ways to resist. There are many ways to love this world into healing. None of them are loud. Not all of them are loud. Not all of them are public, but all of them matter. As we build this beloved community and help make the world a better place, we need the gifts of the young, the middle-aged, and the old, the energetic and the weary, the able-bodied and the differently abled, the lifelong Unitarian Universalist and the newly curious seeker, and the company of all our collaborators of other faiths or of none at all. We who sincerely fear that our democracy is in serious peril are in it together. Let me end by offering you this. We are called not because we are perfect, but because we are present, not to preach from on high, but to walk side by side. Our ministry is not just something we do, it is something we are becoming together. I invite you to step into your ministry, as most of you have been doing all along, in whatever ways are true and possible for you. There is a need for your story. There is a need for your gifts. There is a need for your presence. May it be so. And now, please join us in singing Wake Now My Senses, number 298. Please stand if you're willing and able, and the words will be up here. To close our service this morning, I return to Conclave. This, toward the end of the film, with twists and turns and betrayals and power plays along the way, another Cardinal Benitz of Kabul, Afghanistan, where Christians are a persecuted minority, calmly rebukes those who have been jockeying for power with these words: "Forgive me, but these last few days we have shown ourselves to be small and petty men. We have seemed concerned only with ourselves, with Rome, with those elected, with power. But these things are not the church. The church is not tradition. The church is not the past. The church is what we do next." End of quote. Likewise, this community of faith is not the past. It's not our traditions. It's what we do next. Each of us is defined by what we do next, not by our past. Go in peace and love and pay attention to what we do next. Join me in the words for distinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for being here today.